Kia ora koutou katoa. I'm Baylee and this is Simon, and we're both ecologists that work for Wildlife Management International. Unfortunately, Biz can't be here, so we'll try our best to present her slides. We'll just be going through the black-fronted tern projects we've been involved with and the progress that they've achieved. So black-fronted terns are a nationally endangered species with an estimated population of around 1 to 5,000 mature individuals. However, they are predicted to decline at a rate of 50% over 3 generations, as Colin mentioned earlier. They do face a myriad of threats, which include predation, flooding, extreme weather events, and invasion of woody weeds. And with 60% of their population on the Canterbury Braided river system, it's important that we get an idea of how their populations are doing and what we can do to help them. So over the last 10 years, Wildlife Management International has been involved in 3 different black-fronted tern projects. This includes one on the Waitoa and the Akron River, which has been going for the last 10 years. The Huranui and Waio, which has just done their 5th year, and the Rakaia River, which is going into their 2nd year. We'll be covering the initial phases of monitoring with the Rakaia River as the example, and then what the introduction of basic habitat enhancements and predator trapping can do for tern numbers, and then along with what creating a black-fronted tern safe haven looks like with several other measures introduced. The first thing we do is find black-fronted terns. This is often most efficiently done by pack rafting or on foot or helicopters and jet boat if we, have that opportunity. So once we find a colony, we'll go through several steps. We'll survey each colony, which involves walking in a zigzag pattern up and down the island, just searching the ground for nest with eggs. Once we find a nest, we'll locate it on GPS, give it a unique number, and then we'll build a rock cairn, can't quite see, 1 metre downstream, just so that it's easier to find on future visits. Several nests on each colony will be given a trail camera, just so that we can monitor what's happening through the night. And then these checks will be carried out weekly until either the last chick has fledged or until the whole colony has failed. So this is the Rakaia River on the season just been. So there was a 35% hatching success, which is pretty low. We did have a high amount of flooding that year, whereas usually predation would be the largest cause of failure. And in orange, it's the percentage that was unknown for that season, but usually that would be about the amount that's abandoned each year. So predation is often the leading cause of failure over the 3 projects we've been monitoring, and harriers have been identified as the top predator on several of these rivers. Cats and mustelids also cause a lot of issues, and southern blackback gulls are also significant predators on a couple of the rivers. There's also, so a vast amount of predations occur at nighttime in areas where predator control hasn't contained these numbers. Abandonment is also quite high and ranges between 9 to 28% throughout each season. This is also largely caused at night due to disturbances that cause the birds to freak out and abandon their nests. During the day, they're aggressive as ever and they won't care if you're near their nest. They'll just keep dive bombing you. But at night time, it just takes a rabbit to get too close to abandon their nests. Flooding is also becoming more of an issue. It ranges between 3 to 40% of nest outcomes. In the 2019 season, we had 40% of nests flood on both the Huranui Waio project and the Waitoa clearance project. And then out of these hatched chicks, there's also a large number that also get flooded. So these are the last 4 summer seasons, the river flow rate for the Rakaia River. So we've only monitored the last season, which is 2021 in green, but you can see there's 2, that doesn't work. These 2 seasons past the maximum threshold, which is this black dotted line, where flooding becomes an issue to these terns. So you could imagine that those seasons didn't go very well either. Our monitored season, we had one large flood on the 6th of December, which ended up flooding out the rest of the nests and chicks on those 3 monitored colonies. So that's all it took, really. Between 10 to 44% of nests hatch on average when there's no other implementations. And out of these hatched chicks, only 0 to 45% would fledge. So the main causes of chick fatality is predation, flooding, and heat exhaustion. So you may be thinking, well, this isn't good. Surely there's something we can be doing to help these numbers increase. So both the Waio and Huranui and the Waitoa project, we set up 5-year management plans where basic predator trapping and several island enhancements were carried out. And so I'll get Simon to talk about the next.
Thank you, Baylee. So on the Huranui Waio, island enhancement was carried out, and this just involves where we've identified suitable habitat, breeding habitat. We've dug out the channels around these sites, so hopefully either prevent predators from accessing or deter them from crossing. So this is one of our sites on the Huranui. This is Niwa Island, and the breeding colony is about there. So in the last season, 2 seasons ago, we set up a predator control lines across either one of these on either side of the river, which was composed of DOC 200s and SA2 cat traps. Unfortunately, to our unfortunate surprise, that we actually had a rat incursion, which is not something that we were expecting, and I guess that's a lesson learned. So, for example, in our clearance trapping, rats are not really an issue at all. But basically, rats got onto the island and wiped out basically 99% of the breeding nests on these islands, and that was over a 5-day period. And when we found out, we tried to do a response of setting up A24s. These are the good nature self-resetting traps, but too little, too late. And the 2 nests that were left, these were later wiped out as well. So, a takeaway for us was to take this knowledge and improve our trapping networks. And now we've included Victor traps along the section of the network at 50-meter spacings, and there's our main enhanced breeding island there. And so overall, it's working. So this is over the 4 years of from 2017 to 2022 monitoring. So these treatment colonies, which include the one treatment island that's got trapping around it, as well as several others that have enhancement as well. So we can see, like, at least hatching success is quite a lot larger than these non-treatment colonies, which are just basically monitored. Predation is a lot lower, but we also had instances of even in these treatment colonies where a single cat can get across and wipe out an entire colony in a single night. Importantly, flooding is a lot lower than it was in the non-treatment colonies, and nest abandonment is sort of similar across the board. And yeah, and for the next section, we're going to be talking about the Clarence River, and this is our main project. And for that, I'll leave that to Baylee to introduce us to.
So Wimel started monitoring on the Clarence River in 2012, and so we just carried out 3 years of basic monitoring. Then we progressed into a 5-year plan where we had 3 enhanced islands with predator trapping grid surrounding those. We also had really high hatching and fledging success on these 3 treatment islands, and so in 2012 the plan was made to start a next 5-year plan, which we now call phase 2, with further implementations added. So one of the main things was increased island enhancement. There was about 6 other islands that we chose to enhance before the 2021 season occurred. So the season just been was the first year of phase 2. There was also 2 other islands from previous years that were still good to go, so that was a bonus. Weed clearing was carried out where necessary. We had predator trapping grids expanded and improved so that we could target a wider range of species, and I'll just let Simon give you a rundown on that.
Cool, thanks, Baylee. So this is what the trapping regime used to look like. So in the middle here, there would be a colony, and we'd set up a trapping almost grid with a 500-meter buffer and a 1K buffer following that river. As you know, birds are mobile creatures, so we may be trapping here and maybe it still fails and they'll nest downriver. And so the plan was to change up this trapping network and move it into more of a trapping network that follows the river, so we can hopefully target more of those predators lurking in the shadows and hopefully increase our catch rates. So over the last couple of seasons, that's what the plan was. So we've changed from that grid base into that line, and the network sort of change of the network comes with growing pains. So from our initial response, we were able to get 2 targeted sections of the river trapped. Now in the but it obviously produced this large gap where there was no predator control. But the season just gone, we were able to fill that gap, and we're catching lots of predators. And then also, in addition to that, we also have extended the trapping network even further. So now it's 23 kilometers on each side, so 56 in total. So it's a bit of a beast now. And currently the team is, as we speak, working their butts off to try and do some much needed maintenance and hopefully get those traps set up next week, which are open usually in July, and they'll go all the way until February. So hopefully, but we'll keep them open if those terns are still trying to lay eggs or still breeding at that point. 800. So I don't know. So many. So each site. So each trapping site is 100 meters apart, and at a particular trap site, we'll either have one DOC 250, and then at the next site, we'll either have a DOC 150 combined with an SA1 or SA2 trap, or instead of a DOC 150, it'll be a DOC 200. So one trap a couple of traps every 100 meters. So you can do the math for me. We catch a variety of predators. throughout the network, which is awesome. As you can see, there's no shortage of hedgehogs, which are the killer for the terns. Obviously, pretty interesting. Like catches fluctuate throughout the year, like in response to the species biology, but obviously lots of hungry cats and hungry mustelids in the winter, and then we have like dispersing young in the summer months. There's the hedgehogs coming out of hibernation, which is a good catch rate. Over the past several years, we see the same sort of pattern. So hungry animals in the winter looking for that fresh rabbit that we provide, and then we have dispersing young coming out during the summer. And I'll pass it back on to Baylee to talk about all the other wonderful enhancement stuff that we do.
So this season just been was the first time we put out 2 designs of chick shelters. So they were put out maybe a week before the chicks were due to hatch, just about half a meter away from the nests. Because chicks can't thermoregulate, we were finding that they would overheat a lot of the time, and previous seasons we'd come to nests and just find newly hatched chicks dead in their nests with no other real reason for their fatality. And so upon checking nest cameras, the ground temperatures were actually recorded between 40 to 49 degrees on consecutive days. So we were just hoping that providing shelter would give them some shade throughout the season. We did some adult and chick banding throughout the season just to get a better idea of population dispersal and along with chick recruitment in future years. And then we also carried out one harrier banding trip just because harriers are the largest predator on the Waitoa caught on camera. So we're just hoping to get a better idea of their population in the area and which particular birds are predating nests. So with all those implementations in place and no major flooding last season, we actually had quite a successful breeding season. In fact, that is the highest hatching success we've had in the last 10 years, which is really positive. So to break that down, we had 78% hatching success on 2 enhanced islands that were nested upon. The rest of the enhanced islands were unfortunately destroyed during the winter floods, but those ones still did quite well. 53% hatching success on treatment colonies. This was also which treatment colonies are all the colonies that were established within the trapping line and that had chick shelters added. This was actually quite good as well, considering over half of the nests were on the mainland. So previously they would be wiped out by predators, but they seem to hold their own this year. And then this is a bit of a freak season for non-treatment colonies. Never in the past 10 years would you see anything that successful, but the main reason for that is the 3 largest colonies we had ended up nesting on basically perfect natural enhanced islands. So they were really large and they had strong river flow surrounding the islands. They were raised high enough to escape floods, and they had vegetation scattered around to provide shade for these birds. There was also a 1080 drop on the true left-hand side of the river, which was done by Osprey for their TB-free program. So that could have helped contribute to low predator numbers in those areas as well. So fledgling success is also drastically improved with the introduction of treatment colonies, treatment islands. And then there's that exception last season where non-treatment island fledgling success was much higher just because of the successful islands they chose to nest on, basically. In 2015, we only had predator control established at that time, so there's not too much difference. But there was also a drought that season, so all the channels had dried up and predators were allowed to go wherever they wanted. So chick shelters were a real success this season. We had evidence of chicks using the shelters as early as 1 day old, which was quite cool. Basically, they were using them for escaping the heat on really hot days. There was no evidence that they used them to shelter from aerial predations, but we didn't actually have too many predations on those colonies. So yeah, that's something else to look into. A chick using the shelter on a 38-degree day while the parents incubating the second egg. We only had 2 harrier predations caught on camera this season, and it looks like it was by the same bird at 2 different nests, the same unbanded adult bird. So this kind of supports the idea that predation by harriers is a learnt behavior. So we think over time they've learnt that there's a food source here. When we banded the harriers, over half of them were 1st and 2nd year birds. So maybe they haven't really caught on that there's a potential food source for them in this area. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do more harrier banding to target specific areas and look into that a bit more. So in order to keep increasing these numbers over the following seasons, we'll continue to do island enhancements where necessary. So this year we enhanced a further 5 islands, and they're all still looking really good. We were out there last week, and so far they've survived the floods, so hopefully they can make it through this winter as well. We're leaving a little bit of vegetation on islands just to provide that extra bit of shelter along with the chick shelters. Predator trapping lines are continued to be enhanced and extended to target a wider range of species and cover more area. Adult and chick banding can be continued just to get a better idea of their behavior and dispersal. And even tracking those birds would be the next step, which I know Fraser's been doing. So you'll get to hear all about that next, which is really exciting. And then we've also got more harrier banding trips scheduled in for the next 2 months. So hopefully we'll be able to see more of what they're doing in terms of predating terns there. So yeah, hopefully with all these implementations in place, it'll continue to help the fledgling success of black-fronted terns along with all the other braided river species that will also benefit from these enhancements. We've had a lot of support, but I'd just like to say a big thank you to ECAN, Doc and Linz who have provided the funding for this project to allow it to be as successful as it has been. So yeah, thank you.
I'll jump in for that. It's something we should look a bit harder at, but in the previous season, mustelid catches were way lower than we expected, but there's also that 1080 drop might have contributed to that as well, so it's a bit hard to tease that apart. But I guess there's always predation going across, and I think maybe initially we're probably just harvesting, just controlling the line, so to speak.
Yeah, so a lot of the time you'll see them feeding on insects and small fish along the rivers close by, along with on the farm land grasses surrounding these rivers as well. So I guess it would also, you'd have to look at where these terns are dispersing and like where they're feeding, kind of where they're going, like how far they have to go. But yeah.
Fresh rabbit is what we go to. If we can't source that, we'll go to chicken necks, but predominantly it's fresh rabbit.
One more quick question.
We check the traps hopefully every 2 weeks. So rebaiting every 2 weeks, and checking the traps. Yeah. Obviously can be a bit weather dependent on the Clarence River, lots of snow and then sunshine the next day.